but hey, apparently the game's good now.
Battlefield 2042, easily the most disappointing Battlefield of all time. There were some bad ones before this. Battlefield 5 had that disastrous controversy where the chief designer decided to say, if you don't like it, don't buy it. And strangely enough, the game failed to meet sales expectations after that quote. Wonder why that is. And Battlefield 4 also had a similarly buggy and disastrous launch, with the game crashing every time the skyscraper did what it was programmed to do, which is collapse halfway through the game. But none were as reputation destroying as Battlefield 2042's launch, a game that was way buggier than the mess that was Battlefield 4, and that after launch had way more controversy than Battlefield 5 could have ever hoped to dream it would get. It started off good with a fantastic trailer that got everyone hyped up until they revealed the specialist, then people start to get a little bit worried. What? Nothing. The reveal trailer was fantastic, and the gameplay trailer that came out was also great. Then the beta came out.
You see what I'm saying? Parachutes. Every 10 seconds something happens. Flash of light. Every 10 seconds, more flashes of light. More. There it goes.
Oh no.
And then people started to cancel their pre-orders, and in response, DICE panicked and said, well, what? A buggy game? The game's gonna be buggy at launch? No, don't worry. That beta was a months-old build for some reason. No need to cancel your pre-orders. Please don't cancel your pre-orders. EA is very angry at us. The full launch of the game is gonna be way further into development. It has a lot more testing. It'll be well polished, no bugs.
So that was a fucking lie.
Nobody liked this game. Not fans, not YouTubers, not even fucking critics. It was terrible. Unstable as hell, every map sucked ass, nobody liked the specialists in places of classes, gunfights only worked 60% of the time in an FPS, and there were so many missing features that fans made an entire fucking list. It got bombed on Steam, bombed on Metacritic, bombed on fucking Google, because 50% on Google might as well be 0% everywhere else. Player counts fell, more people began consistently playing Battlefield 5 over the latest installment, and most people reasonably thought that the game would be abandoned and die within a few months. But surprisingly, they'd be proven wrong, as DICE actually got committed to fixing this game like they did with Battlefield 4 beforehand, although it wouldn't be as easy this time around, as Battlefield 4 actually had a solid base and at its core is easily one of the best Battlefield games. It's just the bugs that they had to fix. Meanwhile, Battlefield 2042 was buggy and a shit game at its core. DICE had a huge task ahead of them, and to start off, DICE posted this video just 6 months after launch detailing changes that they would make to improve on 2042's faults, such as giving the operators fucking beards.
They're too pristine, right? So we need to, they need to be dirty, they need to be gritty. How do we fit that in?
Oh, so that was the problem all along. Not that not one soul liked the specialists over classes. Not that the game can't function without having a bug every 5 minutes. Not that features that have been in every Battlefield and FPS beforehand are missing, like a fucking scoreboard. No, the problem with the game is that the operators are just a little bit too pretty, just a little bit too pristine. Oh, I knew something was fucked with my immersion. Not my character falling through the planet right there, but that the operators look like they've taken a shower within the last 48 hours. So 2042 started its road to recovery in a pretty shitty way. The operators looked a bit grittier, a fix that brought the entire community back, as you can see from this chart. For 8 months, there was practically nothing done to the game, although that doesn't mean that DICE and EA weren't busy talking, because they talked a lot, such as EA blaming Halo for 2042's failure because Halo was polished and 2042 wasn't. Then release a polished game. Sir, 2042 is now one of the top 10 worst rated Steam games and only has a consistent 1,000 people playing, and has a refund petition with over 100,000 signatures. Damn it! This is because of you. This is all your fault. Although it's not like they weren't busy updating the game during this time frame. No, they were hard at work, because in December, this skin got leaked. And then DICE got yelled at by the community. The skin was never released. And also in December, in response to the game getting fucked by everyone, rearrangements were made to DICE's management, as the legendary Vincent Pella was made the boss of the franchise, who made his presence immediately felt, as in January of 2022, DICE teased the new scoreboard system, which would be released in February of 2022, 1 month later. It then got delayed to March. A scoreboard was delayed by a month.
The game had been out for 4 months at that point. But aside from some bug fixes and the world's greatest scoreboard that required a delay and 4 months to develop, which is understandable because look at how beautiful it looks, definitely doesn't look like every other FPS with a scoreboard that had it at launch. That was basically it for the first 8 months of the game, aside from Rush and TDM being added as limited time modes, then removed. That pissed everyone off. But eventually, after 8 months, the real content update finally came as DICE finally revealed Season 1 of the game, where not only did the operators get a bit dirtier, but they also removed the cringy-ass lines at the end of the match that made me want to commit non-existence.
Don't be sad. This is just how it works out sometimes.
I'm not sad.
But not only did the game get a little bit more serious, there was also 1 new map, 2 new weapons, 2 new vehicles, and a new operator. And it's safe to say that Season 1 was a massive success. These sweeping changes blew everyone's expectations out of the water. Fans came flooding back into the game once again, as you can see from the slight tumor in this graph. Here's where it was at launch. Here's the slight tumor known as Season 1. Release your game in a complete state, people. They also began trying to fix the worst maps in Battlefield history. Sorry, I mean 2042's launch maps, starting with Kaleidoscope, and the way they fixed it was by adding random sandbags into C1 that you could hide behind. And be prepared for this to become a running theme, because this is basically what happened to every map in the game. So Season 1's launch didn't do much. Battlefield 5 was still consistently outperforming 2042 on Steam charts, and it got so bad that EA excluded 2042 from its actives game list and replaced it with Battlefield 5. So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, our newest Battlefield is still doing very well, still consistent 20,000 players even 4 years after launch.
Excuse me, sir?
Yes.
Isn't Battlefield 2042 the latest Battlefield? Or anybody else?
So 1 month after the launch of Season 1, the player base had already begun to flatline again. So in an attempt to salvage the 14% of the player base that DICE had won back with the launch of Season 1, they posted this video in August of 2022 outlining the sweeping changes that would be coming with Season 2, such as a new map, Stranded, which is a desert with a blue boat in the middle. Not to be confused with the launch map, Discarded, which is a desert with a red boat in the middle. Don't get them confused, you dumbass. They're 2 very different maps with very different aesthetics. Get your fucking colors sorted. They also added 3 new guns, big improvement on the 2 from last season, and a new operator, while at the same time trying to desperately salvage the dogshit maps they made by once again going into their engine's template feature and randomly adding sandbags into Renewal and Orbital like they did to Kaleidoscope before it.
With Renewal, the team have worked to improve the tempo across the map. And new emplacements throughout the map when moving from cover to cover. We're set to deliver a second refreshed map in Season 2, with Orbital next in line to receive updates.
This season did about as well as you'd expect. But Season 3 is where the real big changes came, as not only did the game come to Game Pass, which brought a huge influx of Xbox players, but DICE finally answered one of the community's biggest complaints with the game since before the game even launched. The operators and how they replaced the basic class system, and finally, after 1 year, DICE finally added the classes back into the game at the halfway point of Season 3. And here they are, Assault, Engineer, Support, and Scout. See, here's my Engineer class, Boris, who looks like an uncle that reeks of gasoline. Here is that Engineer quick-scoping enemies. It's just what Engineers do. See, here's the Scout, a class for snipers, which is hinted at with his choice of apparel being a ghillie suit. Here's that Scout spraying and praying with the PP Bison. It's just what Scouts do. But sticking with the actual good changes, DICE also fixed 2 new maps, Breakaway and Manifest. The map in a construction site with the boat on the side, not to be confused with the desert map that has a red boat in the middle, which you could also confuse with the newer desert map that has a blue boat in the middle, but that's a blue one, not a red one. They actually made some pretty good changes on Manifest, moving the objectives closer together and adding enough pounds of sandbags to create a fucking beach. But hey, at least it kind of works here since the map is a construction site, although an oil rig in the middle of Antarctica, yeah, the sandbags don't work as well there. But this map also got some actual good changes with 2 new flags, which means that instead of running for 5 minutes to reach the nearest flag, you only have to run for 3 minutes. Oh, sorry. I just had to run like 800 meters. Anyways, I hear you guys don't like this map because it's too big. It's designed like shit. There's no cover. So I'll fix one of those issues for you.
I add sandbag.
But overall, with the classes coming back and some actual good map reworks and the game coming to Game Pass, things were for the first time in a whole last year finally starting to look up for Battlefield 2042, and it showed in the graphs, which finally looked like they had some actual fucking life in them. DICE would have to keep this momentum going for Season 4, and I mean, they kind of just did the standard thing, a new map, 3 new weapons, and a new operator. But the real kicker was what they announced shortly after the season's launch. Battlefield 2042 would be free to play on PlayStation Plus as part of March's monthly games. Where before it being on Game Pass brought a bunch of Xbox players coming in, this brought an influx of PlayStation players, and for the first time since launch, Battlefield 2042 servers feel alive. While this didn't do much for the PC player count, it definitely got a lot of console players' attention, and it got me interested in checking the game out once again to see if it's gotten better after all this time. And right off the bat, I noticed substantial improvements with the gameplay within my first match. At launch, the gunplay was solid and easily my favorite part of the game when it worked properly, which is something that I didn't do very often. But after nearly 2 fucking years, gunfights are actually flawless now. When you shoot somebody, your bullets actually register. Can you imagine the revelation? And because of that simple fix of shooting people actually hurting them in a first-person shooter, it is definitely the best part of the game now. The gunplay just feels so much better compared to other Battlefields. It's not too far off from Modern Warfare 2019's and Modern Warfare 2's gunplay. While COD's is still a bit better in my opinion, 2042 is still a viable competitor. And speaking of COD, it kind of feels like they took some inspirations from that game's more arcadey style in the sniping category, which I'm not too sure how I feel about. On one hand, I am way better at it, and this is easily the best I've been at sniping in a Battlefield game, but on the other hand, it kind of takes away from the complexity of the other games with having to accurately adjust your sniping distance. Now it's just aim and shoot, or shoot slightly ahead of them if they're far away like every other game and Battle Royale, which kind of takes away from how unique the sniping was in Battlefield with it being a bit more realistic. Sure, I sucked at it, but when I actually landed my shots, it made it all the more satisfying in comparison to COD's MLG quickscoping and snapshotting that I could do in 2042. This was something that I didn't notice during my initial review of the game, but after replaying it, I notice it now, and it just feels slightly off to me. Not the biggest complaint, but I think I just prefer the old style, although something I did notice in my initial review of the game was that the PP Bison was fucking broken, and 2 years later, the PP Bison is still fucking broken. After 2 years, I was assuming this gun would have been nerfed to the point where it was shipped, but no, it's still fucking busted. Maybe it's a good thing that every class has this gun available, otherwise the engineer class would have been ridiculous having an SMG this good. Then again, the classes are barely even classes, and the specialists can be super fucking broken in certain situations. I already dabbled in the new class system, but let's get more in depth, because let's be real here, this class system is a class system in namesake alone. It does the job, I'm glad it's here, and it's better than nothing. I mean, I can't be a medic shooting down vehicles with a fucking rocket launcher, which when you think about it for 2 seconds was the stupidest thing in the world. God, this game was shit at launch. But in the grand scheme of things, these classes really don't feel as impactful as they did in the other games. Sure, only engineers can repair now, and only support can give ammo and health, but the weapons just don't give it that same feeling like it was in Bad Company 2 or Battlefield 3, 4, 1. Those games' classes are so much more superior because of the limited guns, and maybe DICE would have given each class specific weapon categories if they didn't only launch with 22 guns. Meanwhile, Battlefield 4 had 70 fucking 6. Jesus Christ. What the fuck was DICE doing during this game's development aside from not testing the game and concocting the worst maps the franchise has ever seen to the point where they had to spend the next 2 fucking years fixing each and every single individual one? Like, when I look at it that way, I get why the guns aren't split up, because then each class would only have like 7 guns. And when you pan over to Battlefield 4, you can see that each class has slightly more than 7 guns. So on one hand, I get why they did the classes this way, but then on the other hand, I just have to question why the fuck are there this little weapons? But it's more than that. The fact that squad mates can still revive each other is fucking stupid and takes away from the medics, which was always my main class in the previous game, so it personally pisses me off and ruins the entire role to the point where I barely ever even play as them. It's legitimately my least played class, whereas in the other games, it was always my most played, but here they're fucking useless. When I can heal my squad without needing to limit myself to the medic's kit, Why would I ever play as them? Oh, when they get revived, they have more health. But fucking who cares in the grand scheme of things? And scouts too, the fact that anybody can use a sniper is stupid and takes away from the scouts. Holy hell, scout characters can hold their breath slightly longer.
Recons will be better at holding their breath whilst aiming down sights with sniper rifles.
That's crazy. Here I am using an attachment that does the same thing. And don't even get me started on the fact that operators and their abilities are still fucking dumb and just don't work in a game like Battlefield. It isn't balanced for this and can lead to situations like this. How can the enemy team penetrate this? Of course, there's more to this than just the operators. Obviously, the map's design also has to do with this, which after 2 years is still kind of shit, but the sandbags definitely did help. Out of the 7 launch maps in this game, as of the recording of this video, all of them have been reworked to flow better, all but one, Hourglass, which I have a feeling DICE has saved to the last because they don't know what the fuck to do with the literal garbage that is Hourglass and have just been procrastinating until they have no choice. Can this match just end? I'm leaving this fucking match. This map sucks so much ass, it's not even funny. That map is terrible. Hourglass had all the same issues every fucking launch map had when this game came out, which is it was too big, too open, too much running around, but Hourglass, to get to the 10th degree, it is a literal desert. The definition of a wasteland. Genuinely, the most interesting part of the map is the city on the outside of the map that you can't explore. The background of Hourglass is more interesting than the playable area. The only fun parts on the map are the village when it isn't spanned by 10,000 vehicles killing you as soon as you leave a building, and the stadium. Everything else about this map is a barren wasteland that's shit. Other than adding like 10 new objectives, I don't see how they're gonna fix it. And the reason I'm spending so much time on a map that DICE hasn't gotten around to fixing is because it is a prime example of all the issues that I had with the maps at launch in this game. Sure, I will admit that after the reworks, some of them have gotten better, especially on Conquest. Kaleidoscope and Orbital are both actually somewhat good now and have a decent sense of flow. Meanwhile, Breakaway and Renewal, while they are still a bit too big and open for my liking, are far better than they were at launch. Which you'd assume they would be, considering that's the whole point of a rework, but I digress. Now moving on to the DLC maps, which are all leagues ahead of the launch ones. Spearhead and Stranded are both so good, but Exposure is on another level. Easily the best map in the game. It flows so perfectly. If the rest of the season's maps added throughout the game's life cycle are like these 3, then the future of this game is looking bright because they are fun as hell. Honestly, just add like 5 more maps that are as good as these ones and delete the launch maps. That is how much better these ones are in comparison to the original ones. Okay, I'm exaggerating. Don't do that, but on the down low, I'm actually not exaggerating. I really wouldn't be that mad if they did do that. Things are way better now in the map department. The only real terrible map is Hourglass, which who knows, maybe that map will be great once the rework happens. I kind of doubt it, if I'm gonna be honest. But the rest of the maps are decent to great. On Conquest especially, it can be a fun time. Meanwhile, on Breakthrough, that's a different story, because no matter all the sandbags DICE threw around, every map has the same annoying ass issue and absolutely sucks on Breakthrough. And it's not even necessarily the map's fault, more so the dog shit balancing that this game mode has. For some reason on Breakthrough, attackers have helicopters available to them. Now you would think to properly balance this out, defenders would also have helicopters available to them, so that both teams have a fair amount of air controls and have an equal chance of winning. Defenders only get ground vehicles while attackers get both. Now this does make sense, as in a lot of modes like this, attacking is always a lot harder than defending, so the devs have to give the attackers advantage through other means, and usually in Battlefield that means giving the attackers more vehicles. But here they've given the attackers such a big advantage that as defenders on certain maps or sectors, it is completely fucking boring because you just get steamrolled. When it's a completely open map or sectors, defenders are just getting mowed down by the chopper constantly. And while there are ways to shoot the chopper down, such as an AA gun, the only problem is the AA gun must be legally blind because they cannot track the helicopter to save their fucking life. What the fuck?
The missile knows where it is at all times. It knows this because it knows where it isn't.
You could also try the recoilless M5, which is an RPG with no lock-on, and try to lead your shots. But in order to do that, you better hope it's the most garbage pilot in history. And even if you do hit them, they'll just fly away to a section that's outside the map, wait around for 30 seconds, and then fly back with full health. This issue is on every map that has an outside objective, which is basically every map in the game. The only time the defending team has a chance is when it's a poorly thought out objective that attackers can't do shit against. That is essentially breakthrough now, either attackers steamrolling you while their helicopter is zooming in, ending you, and then zooming away while your AA missile is barreling towards Jesus instead of the helicopter, or a defense that you can't walk into without being murdered in a heartbeat. I miss operations from Battlefield 1 and 5. Thankfully, Conquest is still Battlefield's highlight and has only gotten better with all the reworks. Not sure if this is true or not, but playing on all the reworked maps, it feels like they had Conquest in mind more so than they had Breakthrough, because they flow way better for this mode. Sight lines aren't as long anymore, so you aren't getting sniped constantly, and objectives are closer together, so you're not running around as much anymore, which was one of my biggest complaints with the mode at launch. Sure, it is still there, but not as bad as it used to be, and overall, I can see myself playing this mode even after this video. Same with Portal, which was easily my favorite feature of 2042 at the time of launch, and it's a fun way to re-experience some of these older games to get a burst of nostalgia, although I am pretty disappointed that after 2 years, no new games or more maps have been added to Portal. It's still just Bad Company 2, Battlefield 3, and 1942. Like, come on, I get not a new game, but at least a map. At the very least, could we get like Operation Metro in here? That'd be fun as fuck. And I mean, why not a new game? I'd love to play Battlefield 2 on Portal. That game's fun as fuck. At the very least, you can play on dedicated servers now, which is a great change, since at launch this mode was played with nothing but bot farms. Now they have a category called Portal Tour, which will throw you into a random game in Portal, including fucking Battlefield 2042 for some reason. What? Oh my god, I'm going on 2042. Why the fuck is 2042 on Portal? That's so brain dead. Why would they put Battlefield 2042 on this list, and why do I get it so fucking often? I'm choosing Portal to play the older games. If I felt like playing 2042, I choose Conquest or Breakthrough on 2042. Rush and TDM were also added into the game, and Rush actually works surprisingly well here. Honestly, I think I prefer it more than Breakthrough. It's far simpler and balanced a lot better, while it does still feel better in the older Battlefields, especially Bad Company 2, but nothing will ever beat that. Rush is actually still a surprisingly fun time. TDM is ass though. It's a clusterfuck and it's ass. And then there's Hazard Zone. Let's see how the dog shit mode that replaced the campaign is doing after 2 years.
I'm the first to acknowledge, high hopes, we set out on a path, but we haven't gained the traction we wanted with this mode. You can still find it in the mode selection screen, but for the maps that are coming in the seasons, we won't put it as a focus.
This seems like a good time to move on to the final verdict. So after 2 years, it took some time, a lot of embarrassments, and I guess Halo Infinite failing according to EA, but Battlefield 2042 is in a far better state than it was at launch, which isn't saying much. The class system is back, majority of the bugs are gone, the maps are actually playable now, with the new ones especially being very good, but then again, issues still persist. Conquest is the only actual fun mode here since Breakthrough is an unbalanced mess, and I guess Rush is a decent break from it. Portal is fun, but for some reason it forces you into 2042 matches. I have no fucking reason. That still hurts my brain with how stupid it is. And Hazard Zone, I miss campaign. So with all that, all those good changes and persisting issues, the final verdict for Battlefield 2042 2 years later is a 6. A 6 out of 10, and that is me being pretty nice, if I might add. And I'm being nice because I respect that DICE stuck to their guns and actually put the time to fix the game and improve upon it and make it somewhat playable. It never should have fucking launched like that, but a 6 is still pretty good for this game, because at the time of my original video, I wasn't rating games, but who if I was? If I were to give Battlefield 2042 a score out of 10, it would have been a 3! It was fucking garbage at launch. It was a shit game at a shit Battlefield. Aside from the gunplay that only worked properly 60% of the time, there was nothing good about the game at launch. A buggy mess, terrible maps, operators that nobody asked for and nobody liked, game modes that were a step back from the previous titles, and so many missing features that the community had to make a fucking list. So when you look at it that way, how the game was then and how far it's come now, and being able to get a 6, hey, it's a job well done. From a 3 to a 6, that's a big step up. You've taken a rotting corpse of a game that stunk of garbage and embalmed it and made it look prettier over the course of 2 years. Of course, it is still a corpse because 20,000 players ain't nowhere near what this game was getting at launch. But hey, DICE has showed that they're committed, and you know what? I have faith. Maybe in another 2 years they'll get their player base back. And they've shown that they've learned from their mistakes, so maybe the next Battlefield will be great. Hell, all the new maps here are the best in the game. Maybe by Season 8, this will be a completely different game and it'll be an 8. But even if that happens, it'll still always have the reputation it had at launch. That is never going away, which is why you have to get it right at launch. Stop releasing your games in a shit state and trying to desperately win people back over time.
Damn it. Stupid ass tornadoes are breaking my shit. I'll fix it. What the? No dice, no